There you go. See, I accidentally see. That's why I appreciate all you. See, shout out to you. Shout out Brown Sugar Smile. I appreciate you. I went a whole like 1 minute talking, and the damn thing wasn't even on. Okay, can y'all hear me now in the chat? Yes, no. How's it sound? It's still no sound. Y'all can't hear me. Hold on. Okay, hold on. Give me a sec. All right, last try. I'm gonna just what the hell is going on with this damn thing? This y'all blowing me. I'm struggle streaming with the best of them now. Okay, all right. I'm in that mood. I'm gonna just stay like this. I don't know what the hell's going on. All right. Any event, attorney, natural attorney, Marcus, reactions, finance, all of that good stuff. We're gonna pivot to Dolton, Illinois. I did not pull up the court case because I just didn't have the time and didn't want to take this deep of a dive. And now I'm gonna have to put I don't know chapters in this video so everybody can skip that 2 minutes of bullshit that I that I had going on with no sound. Now it's interesting because we're going to stay in good old Dolton, but this time, hey, I put a big no sign over Tiffany Henyard's face because we're talking about money that may have been misused or misappropriated. And as far as I can see, she is nowhere near associated with this matter. In a few videos, a couple people talked about and asked like if she had a PR team. I don't think that she does have a PR team, but if she did have a PR team, nothing works as well for PR as especially when you got negative shit going on is to have something go on in the same area that's also terrible and more terrible. So right now we're gonna dive into this lawsuit. I want y'all to. I was actually gonna read the article, but we're gonna talk about it. Before we go into the lawsuit, actually, I gotta explain something for y'all because it's interesting because it's actually pandemic relief money, and I want to let me go ahead and pull this up so we can know exactly where this money came from and what it was supposed to be for. All right, I don't know if y'all can see the screen right there. Uh, what is ESSER funding? Okay, I'm gonna read it verbatim, but this is interesting because I had a lot of jobs. I used to work at the Department of Education Office of Inspector General, so I was like, "Ooh, I know what that is." But in 2000 and in 2020 and 2021, Congress passed three stimulus bills that provided nearly 189.5 billion dollars for K through 12 and post-secondary schools, called the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. These three stimulus bills included Tier 1 was introduction of, as part of the CARES Act in May of 2020, setting aside 13.2 billion dollars for uses including technology, summer learning programs, student mental health support. All those is good things. I don't think nobody will beef or complain about that. Let's take a look at what Tier 2. Tier 2 was introduced as a part of the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, signed into law in December of 2020, and includes all the provisions in Tier 1 plus an additional 54.3 billion dollars. Awards allowable use include helping schools safely reopen and addressing learning loss. And Tier 3, which is at issue in this news story we're about to see, commonly referred to as ARP ESSER, is part of the American Rescue Plan and was enacted in March of 2021. It includes everything in 1 and 2, including an additional $122 billion for K through 12 education. At this point, and it just breaks down what can it be used for. Long story short, we're not about to go into all that. Long story short, the point of those funds were because of the pandemic, and you all who had children out of there, y'all probably saw this firsthand. My son was in like his 9th grade year when the pandemic started, and all of that virtual learning, that shit really kind of fucked kids up. Like it really kind of screwed them up. They were all like their social skills were like kind of out of whack, and it took them a long time to kind of reacclimate and everything. And so those funds were designed to help schools, elementary, high schools, with kind of having programs in place and mental health, everything that schools would need to kind of get back up and running and to kind of make up for that lost social interaction, that lost time that kids were out of school doing all of that virtual stuff. Because quiet as it's kept, I just feel like that shit was a year lost. Like I really felt sorry for kids who were like seniors doing that year. But that was the point of what the funds were supposed to be. Now let me go ahead and cue up this story so we can see what's going on with the $13 million, why this lawsuit was filed, and I'm gonna talk a little bit from personal experience on both sides, being this person and actually handling these type of cases. A few things were done relatively smart with this filing. So let's go ahead and dive in and see some money that's probably been misappropriated, allocated to the wrong place, and so far it doesn't look like Tiffany Henyard has any fault or tie to it. Fingers crossed for her.
A suburban school administrator is now filing a lawsuit claiming the district retaliated against her for raising questions about the use of money.
As WGN's Andrea Medina reports, the former deputy superintendent in Dolton claims officials tried to discredit her by damaging her reputation.
I did what all my training told me to do. I followed the process.
Deputy Superintendent Dr. Sonya Whitaker of Dolton West School District 148 was joined by her legal team and other community leaders at Rainbow Push Coalition headquarters on Thursday to announce a lawsuit against the district superintendent and Board of Education for retaliation and racial discrimination. This comes after Dr. Whitaker raised concerns in May about the alleged mismanagement of public funds.
It's about $13 million of federal emergency response money that there were questions about how it was being allocated.
We find it appalling that any school district would misuse federal dollars that are sent to schools to benefit children.
Dr. Whitaker has been with the district for 5 years. The lawsuit claims she made numerous attempts to reach out to both the superintendent and the school board to arrange a meeting and discuss the issue, but a request went allegedly unanswered. The complaint goes on to say Dr. Whitaker was kept out of important meetings, decision-making processes, and later suspended with pay in July.
Then when that leave expired, say nothing to her, except leave her in the dark.
The lawsuit alleges the district did not follow board policy regarding suspension, failing to provide proper notice and due process. It also states that starting on September 5th, Dr. Whitaker was suspended without pay, with the decision being made at a public board meeting, followed by public accusations of misconduct against her.
One of the allegations against Dr. Whitaker in the suspension without pay hearing was that she had withheld school district property, which she could never meet with the superintendent to be able to turn it over, and that she owed the school district, actually accused her of theft.
The lawsuit claims Dr. Whitaker has experienced emotional distress, loss of income, and damage to her professional reputation. Despite these challenges, her legal team says she's still committed to returning to the district and continuing her dedication to the students.
Who is going to advocate and fight on behalf of the children? Who is willing to stand on the right side of the law?
A hearing to consider Dr. Whitaker's termination is set for later this month. We have reached out to the district and the board for comment, but we haven't heard back from them. Reporting in Riverdale, Andrea Medina, WGN News.
All right, so this is actually interesting. Let me see. Federal grant funding for schools have very specific language and rules and how their monies are handled and used in school programs. Ran through them when a teacher illegally recommended Ritalin. Wow. Let me see. If they're in the wrong, they could get their funding permanently revoked. And I don't know, anybody who's been in this channel for a while, that was me. I was in Dr. Whitaker's position before, and it was interesting because it was actual federal funds at issue. And a couple of interesting things happened here. I actually read an article. I found that video because the video was a little bit more concise. But I actually read an article that says she filed her initial grievance while she was still employed. That's always like genius to do. That's actually smart to do. That's like one of the best things to do. I remember when I was going in through a similar situation, they always say if you represent yourself, you have a fool for a lawyer and a fool for a client. So I actually contacted an attorney, and he was mad cool. It was like an employment attorney, and he was like, "Nah, you doing everything right. I ain't even gonna take your money. I ain't even gonna take your money." But one of the things he discussed is it's better to get things initiated while you actually still have employment. And what would be the reason behind that is if you file your initial grievance during the time you still have employment and then you're subsequently terminated or laid off, you always have that argument that, hey, they retaliated because I blew the whistle or disclosed this particular conduct. Now you're talking $13 million. It's going to be interesting, and at some point I may look into complaint. I can't really tell how bad this is. It gives me cause to pause that she never got the meeting with the superintendent. And again, this is just a complaint, so these are just allegations. But it also gives me cause to pause that it is funds related to pandemic relief, because people was playing real fast and loose when it comes to pandemic relief funds. So those are the two things that kind of give me cause to pause. And the third thing is, it depends on the level of the improper use of the funds. Having been an attorney who's been at the Department of Education, if the funds were allocated for, let's see, we allocate these funds for A, and the funds were spent on B, which isn't A, but it was spent on B. Still some misappropriations, improper use, but generally, if the funds made it back to impact the students, the educational system, probably not going to be as terrible. Now, if of that $13 million, some of that money found its way into some other venue or someone's pockets, now we're going to have a really, really big problem. Let me go into this comment real quick. It removes the disgruntled, angry, fired employee. That's always the card they're going to play. Trust me. When I was when I was in Dr. Whitaker's position, I'm sure that was one of the arguments that they asserted. I just knew that it wasn't going to pass muster because y'all promoted me twice and y'all named me executive leader of the year the previous year. So I was like, they can say what they want. My performance is never an issue. But that's always the game that's going to be played is, hey, no, it was a performance issue. That's always can be, well, not always, but most times it can be overcome by showing that you actually have a pattern or a track record of actually not being a jacked up employee. You weren't on performance improvement plans. You weren't caught up in all of these nonsense. Now, if you have a bad employee review and it's maybe the year in with which the complaints or the whistleblower actually complained about whatever the issue is or something like that, that's actually looked at with less scrutiny because that would make sense. You blow the whistle, you talk about misconduct, somebody say, write them a bad evaluation report. That would make sense. So normally they like to look back at a 3-year window. She said she was there, I think, for 5 years, they said. So they got enough time to look back to see historically how she was as a performer. But these cases are actually kind of interesting. I think she did a smart move by actually initially filing her grievance while she was still employed before she was terminated. I'm interested in why she got to litigation so fast. it could be good or bad, because normally when you have these whistleblower things, let's see, you got DFD, I'm working at a place, I see something done that's being wrong, and I say, hey guys, I think that's wrong. Y'all should stop doing that and do it this way. Well, they like, you know what, sit your ass down over there and mind your business. And so now I'm like, oh man, what should I do? So I go to the statute, and for most whistleblower cases, you can report it to the Attorney General, you can report it to the Inspector General. So let's say you go the Inspector General route and report like, hey, they are misappropriating this $13 million in funds. I try to get a meeting with persons to talk about it, and they said, screw you. Well, now that I go to the Inspector General's office, it's just, and this may have happened, but I can't tell from initial reports. I would actually have to dig into the docket, and that was just too high of a lift. But normally, you blow the whistle, nothing happened. You report it to an agency, the Attorney General or the IG, and what would happen is they would do their own investigation. This is normally what happens. You report it, then you get fired. Now you're saying, hey, they retaliated against me from blowing a whistle. That Inspector General's office or Attorney General or whoever you reported it to would do their own investigation. After they reach the conclusion of their investigation, they'll give you a redacted copy of the report. And now, after that investigation is done and you get the redacted copy of your report, they're going to do one or two things. And you still got litigation as an option. But normally they're going to call you and say, hey, what type of relief are you looking for? When somebody calls you and say what type of relief you're looking for, that's essentially a code word for what do you want? What do you want us to do? That's not the time to talk about, yo, I want $150,000. No, that's the time to just say what type of relief you want. It could be monetary damages for lost wages. Some statutes, depending on which whistleblower statute you use, NDAA or something like that, they may allow for some type of other damages in addition to compensatory damages. But the main thing, and we heard that Dr. Whitaker is going to take advantage of it, is a person has the opportunity to be made whole and get placed back in that position that they lost. Sometimes that's favorable for some people, sometimes it's not. I can tell y'all, me personally, I was like, nah, I'm good, because, you know, I did my unemployment time and I found something that was absolutely better. So why would I want to leave something that's better to go back and be in that position? It wouldn't make any sense. Now, I will tell you, if she hasn't got another job, and it doesn't say that, but if she hasn't got another job, I can see where it would be advantageous to get made whole with regard to lost wages and placed back in that position. Because as quiet as it kept, this is just my personal opinion. You file a retaliation claim, you go to court, or either the IG or the Attorney General, y'all negotiate whatever your relief is, and you get back pay, and you get reinstated into that old position. Once you get reinstated to that old position after going through litigation and dealing with a retaliation claim and actually winning, it's a strong possibility that nobody at that job will ever fuck with you again. And that's always a plus. Like, think about it. You just rake them over the hot coals for retaliation in a whistleblower case, and now you ask the court, hey, have them pay me my back pay, any damages, and to make me whole and put me back in that position. So now you're in your same position. You got all of your back pay as if you never lost anything, maybe a little extra for some emotional distress or something like that. And now you're in that position. Do you think somebody is really going to? They would be stupid. It probably happens, but an employer would be foolish after you just beat them over the head in an employment retaliation case for them to retaliate again against you or even fuck with you, honestly, after you've been kind of made whole and put back in that position. But that's kind of what we got going on here. $13 million. It looked like it was misused, but we don't know the full scope of how it was misused. It was just kind of loose language. I may look at the complaint to get more detail. Misuse could be it went to another program that directly impacted the students, or misuse could mean it went into somebody's pocket. We don't know. All we do know is at this stage, there's money at issue in Dolton, and no one has brought up Tiffany Henyard's name except me right now. Except me right now. That's funny, yeah. Yeah, if you get a bad review, don't sign it. Counter it in writing and debate points against the review. Initial and date prior to signing the review. I agree with that 100%. If you do get a bad review, you don't have to agree to it. They actually have internal mechanisms where you can challenge your performance review. So generally, I mean, this isn't even legal advice. This is more common sense advice. You should probably write down all of the things that you do during the course of the year, because no one knows what the hell you do better than you. Not even your boss. Your boss don't know what you do until you actually tell them. So when it comes to evaluation reports for me, every time I work on something, I'm like, okay, they put me on this committee, I did this, I served as acting director for this. I mean, I just jot all of that stuff down. And in most evaluation reviews, you'll actually have a point before your review to do kind of a self-critique of yourself, where you can talk about all the stuff you did. And I literally just take those bullets I wrote, put them right there. I'd be like, hey, this is my self-assessment. Everything that I did, it's already in there. And literally, if you're on a fuck up and you keep track of the things that you do and you annotate it when you have an opportunity before your supervisor does your actual review, most instances, they'll probably literally use what you gave them and put it right in your review. And that's what you want. Right there, you want the golden ticket, I think. Yeah. Can they take the budget for inner city schools and spend on rich kids' personal laptops? The long story short is, if the money is allocated for targeted schools, the answer is probably going to be no. If the money is allocated to certain schools or certain school districts, because it's not uncommon for certain school districts, especially school districts that are identified as, hey, these school districts have more problems, they may have lower test scores. Generally, money is allocated to a particular school district for a reason, and you can't move that money to another school district. I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible to do, but that would probably be a big ass prohibition on any type of grant. And most times with those grants, even with this grant, like normally what happens, I know the organization I worked at, when I had to go through my Whitaker situation, it had a federal grant. And so we had annual reviews every year where like the feds would come down and be like, we got to look at all your books to make sure y'all aren't commingling funds with other agencies. And I mean, they literally went through everything with a fine-tooth comb. We literally had to do that every year. Then the person in charge, who was me at the time, actually had to sign a certification under penalty of perjury saying that, hey, these numbers are right when it comes to our cases, what we're doing with our budget that we had as an organization and the expenditures. I had to sign and verify all that. So I knew I was going to make sure that shit was tight, because I was always scared with the money. I was like, nah, I don't want nobody to jam me up because of a mistake, or I didn't catch how monies were spent here and they shouldn't have. So normally every year when you have a grant, there's going to be some type of compliance mechanism that the federal government will have you do. It may not be a super detailed one every year. Normally what they'll do is every year you kind of have to certify that this is what we're doing. But then let's say every 3 years, they actually may send the federal government down to do an actual on-site review. On-site reviews typically don't occur every year. They may, in this, I can't speak in this educational arena, they may occur every year, but I think that's a tough pull for resources to have an on-site review every year. Your number normally got called once every 3 years for an on-site review, and every other review was normally a review that was just done through certifications and you attesting to things under penalty of perjury. Yeah, the issue is they can also put you in a lesser job position as long as they pay you the same wage at the time they let you go. That could make it miserable in that manner. And that is another good point. Shout out to you, man. Common sense be on it, man. But that is true. it doesn't require you to be in the same position. It does require you to get the same compensation. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think filing the whistleblower retaliation claim, right, Tiffany who, right? But filing the whistleblower retaliation claim, it doesn't necessarily screw you in the community that you're working in. Okay, for instance, if I was in the, let's say we'll use this example. If you're in the educational community, well, I can give you, I'm trying to think. All right, in the situation that I had, I didn't want to get placed back into that position, right? Because I had kind of moved on. But before I actually found the job, I was looking for employment in the same arena. So same organization, probably a little bit bigger, better company. And as quiet as it kept, because I was still in that same arena, like if she tries to get a job in the educational arena, people are actually pretty understanding when you disclose what's going on, because a lot of these things you have to disclose. They may say, hey, have you ever been terminated from a job in the past such and such year? If so, why? And I used to hate that fucking question, because I'm like, damn, I ain't even doing anything wrong, but because I was an at-will guy and they was on some soft shit, I gotta explain why I was terminated. But once I explained what happened, literally everybody was like, oh, that's nothing. Like, everybody literally understood exactly what was going on, and it was something that never was held against me. Actually, it was actually looked at like, damn, this dude got some heart to be able to stand on it like that and try to do the right thing. And I told y'all before, as the situation was happening, a lot of the old heads was like, man, just keep your head down and keep on doing your job. And I was like, nah, bro, I'm not built like that. If I see something wrong, I gotta stand on the right thing. Plus, especially if the wrong thing could screw over someone who falls under my leadership. That definitely wasn't fucking happening. Like, it's one thing if the wrong thing screws me over and I decide unilaterally, hey, I'll take the risk because the wrong thing that they're doing, even if it's an issue, it'll only jack up me. But if somebody's doing the wrong thing and it's going to screw somebody who falls under my leadership, who I'm responsible for, that's definitely a no-go and not an option. Yeah. Yeah, I would say allocating funds only to a specified niche group of students, even within the same school district, would be deemed inequities and favoritism, which violate most federal rules. Yes and no, because it does happen. I remember once, for some reason, I was just be looking at corny stuff. Well, not corny stuff, but nerdy shit. For some reason, I was looking at federal funding to school districts in Maryland, because I was interested to see how much money were schools in Baltimore City. I used to live in Baltimore City. I went to college in Baltimore City, and right across from some high schools where shit was wild, right? And so I was like, I wanted to look at cost per student. How did cost of federal funds per student impact the results that students were taking when they, as far as overall performance? Now, I know that's not really the cleanest way to look at it, because you got to understand that some performance-based tests, they have their own set of issues that make them easier or more difficult for certain categories of persons, depending on overall neighborhood education, quality of education. But I wanted to look at how much money is being allocated per student. Which county in Maryland had the highest amount of money allocated per student, and did that coincide with elevated performance? And interestingly enough, schools in the inner city of Baltimore receive some of the highest federal funding of any of the counties in the entire state of Maryland. I was shocked. I was like, wow, I didn't expect to see that. I thought it was going to be somewhere in Bel Air, Maryland, or Reisterstown, where everybody got big ass houses and money. But no, most of the funding was actually allocated to the schools in the inner city, which led me down a whole nother path of, well, if it's not a cost per student thing that impacts it, what is it? And it's generally all the other stuff. But that was it. I was let go in a job under the premise I would not be just blindly tell the COO yes. They mistook me as a yes person. I told them, you failed to interview me properly. I'm not this person. Yeah, that was my same thing. New leadership came, and under that new leadership, I elevated as the blackest and newest attorney. I went from like a line attorney to like being in charge of a gang of shit in like a period of like 12 months. And I was the youngest guy again, the newest attorney, the blackest attorney, and the youngest attorney. So it was like a super fast elevation. And in hindsight, I do think it was a, hey, you owe me some sense of loyalty because I gave you this opportunity. And I'm like, nah, bro, you didn't give me shit. If it was somebody better to put there, trust me, you would have put them there. So I definitely get that. And a lot of people do think they're yes men. And I'm telling you, honestly, I'm kind of a jerk. Like, if I don't rock with you, I don't rock. If I don't rock with you, I'm not going to ever eat with you. I'm probably never going to shake your hand. But we can get this work done. But I'm not going to be off laughing and giggling with you. It's just not in my demeanor. You didn't interview me properly. That's hilarious. Since then, I tell them up front, I will interview you as heavily in your ethical management as I would expect myself. That's true. Never compromise your principles for a job. Be yourself. I agree. And it was interesting because I think I told this story before, but where I had the issue at in the whole retaliation situation, when I left there and got my next job, this is just how God has favor on people and just how karma works. And you put out what you get what you put out. The organization I left, when I went to the new job that was the better job that paid more and everything, the general counsel, he actually was the first person to hold that position that I literally just left from. So when I explained what the situation was, he got it immediately. He was like, oh, that's what happened? Oh, that's crazy. So literally, like I said, so normally when you have these retaliation things, and if you get put back in the same job and there's a lesser responsibility, same pay, or you don't get the same job, most times it works out well in that community, because if you stood on business on what was right, it's going to show for itself. And I knew the outcome that I selected was the right outcome, because when I look back, they actually had to change some policies. Something just told me one morning, look online, and I looked and I was like, oh, they changed it to what I told them they should have changed it to in the first place. They could have did that from the beginning, but now, hey, it is what it is. But I definitely agree with that. Don't put your head down. That's like an old school ass way of thinking at jobs. Literally, like, people at that job who I thought were like, oh, they've been there a while, they were like my mentor. All the old heads were like, oh man, just put your head down and stop pushing back, young blood. And I was like, what? I was like, what? They had me calling my pops like, man, these people in here talking about, so just put your head down and do the work and let it slide. And I was like, I can't do that. So I definitely agree with that. But I just wanted to talk about this story today because it's funds in Dolton that looks like it may have an issue. Tiffany Henyard's not to blame, but I do think it leads to the consistent pattern that we're seeing. And again, these are just allegations, so we don't know the truthfulness or the veracity of the good doctor's statement. But it does, and it is consistent with a pattern of funds have a potential to be misused. And when there's a lot of funds, it has a higher potential to be misused, misappropriated, stolen, embezzled, laundered, whatever you want to call it. Yo, y'all make sure y'all tune in tomorrow. This is the first guest I had on the show. If y'all go back and look, I'm probably going to have another guest since it's actually like Life Insurance Awareness Month. And we make some mistakes when it comes to life insurance as Black people. We have it at a higher rate than white America, but we are underinsured at a much higher rate. So I may have my homegirl on to kind of talk about that. But tomorrow, I'm going to have my guy William on from Before the Billion. He's a young brother in the tech space. He has a YouTube channel. I'm going to go ahead and upload the thumbnail. I already got the video queued up. I'm going to upload the thumbnail. We're going to go live. And he was recently going through an unemployment journey, something like the one I went through, 6-7 months ago. We're going to talk about that. During the course of this journey, it looks like he got finessed with an employment scam. So we're going to talk about that, because I'm like, hey, employment scams, bro, that's kind of, you own like 60% of that. But we're going to dive into that, and it's going to be an interesting live. And of course, on the back end, or maybe on the front end, we're going to do a little discussion just on some random current events that have monetary nuances or random current events that are just trending that we're going to talk about. And no, we won't talk about Shannon Sharp and his fake leaked audio that he probably put out on his own. That's it for this video. Hey, I appreciate everybody who tuned in. As always, I'm grateful. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all allowing me the opportunity to get a little bit of y'all time. Y'all be safe. Have a good one. Enjoy. Peace. I'll holler at y'all tomorrow.